Well, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us again for another episode of Leading on Mondays. My name is Florin Lungu, and I'm so delighted to be with you today. And I'm joined with my friend and my, teaching partner, Madalina Ghinescu. Hi, Madalina.
Hello, Florin. It's nice to be here again to talk about the difference between how to keep our employees and how to include our employees in our goals, in our company's goals. So we make sure that they stay and they don't want to leave somewhere else. So I'm very, very happy to have some questions prepared for you, Florin, when you're ready.
Absolutely. So this is actually a series of episodes that we're gonna do on talent retention, right? So first thing I think what we want to do is looking at talent retention differently, and that's why we're looking at making that mental shift between retention, which sometimes might have a negative connotation, to inclusion. So I'm ready when you're ready.
Yes, just to give me a few seconds to get to the questions.
Absolutely. So let me share something before we get started, because I think one of the questions that usually leaders have is like, why is talent retention important? Like, why do
Yeah,
we need to keep talent, right? And so, of course, there are many reasons why, but some of the most important are definitely finances, right? So. A 2019 Gallup organization research has shown that when someone leaves your company, it costs your organization somewhere between 50% to 200% their annual salary. In other words, the time that they leave the company, and then you go and find another person to replace them, and the time that it takes for that person to ramp up, maybe they pay your kind of employee still in the company, they have not yet left, but you need to bring someone on board maybe a little bit before, so you pay both of them a salary during that time. So this has
yeah.
been estimated, the cost of one employee leaving has been estimated to be anywhere between 50% to 200% of their annual salary. Think about that.
Yeah, that's a lot. I didn't know that, so thanks for sharing. I could tell from the employee's perspective and an employer's perspective what are the costs for that, but I didn't know that number. So thanks for sharing. It's so, as you can say, as you already said, it's important to keep the people and not to, let's say, switch to other people and to make others employee leave, because when we think about leaving the company, that's another cost for it's a big cost for the company also, not only because we are losing a person, but it's also to put somebody in place. So
Yeah, and
can you tell
sure.
us, Florin, what is the main reason that people leave the company?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. When it comes to the effects of it, it's you're losing the potential of growth because the people leave, but also impacting the morale. Like you said, if someone is leaving, then this will impact the team's morale, and maybe other people will follow. So that sometimes happen, and it changes the dynamics in the workplace when someone, maybe one of the top people in the workplace kind of leaves. Then you know he or she were an informal leader, and what happens after that is the people will maybe change the dynamics. So that's what happens. But the reason why people leave, this could vary. It depends on, we discussed this in other episode, why people leave. One, what that study that the Gallup organization had conducted, they found out that 52% of people that responded to that survey, they said that their manager or the organization could prevent their exit. In other words,
Mhm.
they said that in the last 90 days, of me leaving, no one in my organization, neither my manager or my closest, reports, they have not talked to me about how well I feel at work. They have not talked to me about the future of the company. They have not talked to me about if I'm satisfied or not. So in other words, you know this is a preventable problem, right? So there are many reasons why people leave, But 52% of these people that answered that survey said that their managers could have done something.
Yeah.
And here is what we're trying to help them do, right? By making this shift between talent retention and inclusion and looking at this thing differently, we help the managers, we help leaders to actually, work on that 50% that they could change their minds. Even if they think about leaving, they could change their minds if we as leaders and managers do something about that. And one of the first things is that we should be looking at, changing the way we see retention, because retention might have a negative connotation. If you think about the word retention, it's almost like trying to keep someone against their will, right? Compared to inclusion, where
Yeah.
people stay just because they want to stay. So when we look
Yeah.
at that, we actually, but this is the first strategy I'm going to share this. So we created the guide, 5 strategies to retain top talent, right? So we're going to go through this over the next 5 episodes, and then we look at making the shift, between retention and inclusion. Then we look at, talk to your employees often about the things that are important to them, right? Then we look at, what is next, recognize the early signs of people
Yeah.
leaving, because there are some early signs that you could recognize if you pay attention what's going on there, right? And this again requires effort from the leader. Then we look, number 4 is know what motivates them, right? But know what motivates them individually. Even if you look at a team, but you still motivate individuals on the team. And number 5 will be definitely pay them what they're worth at, because at the end of
Yes.
the day, if you do all the other things but you don't pay them well, then they're gonna probably still look for something else. And we have some really interesting strategies there, that we gather. So if you want a copy of this guide, there will be a link in the comments. You can download that. But today we're gonna look at what can we do to make this shift, right? And the dynamic is this, or the psychology is this. When we are worried about our people leaving, we're thinking about, we have a really really skilled employee, we have someone that performs very well, and we kind of know that maybe they're a little bit overqualified for this role, or they are a little bit, above kind of the average of the team, and we're worried, what if they leave? And when I was in one of the corporations I worked for, we had these scenarios, and we say, well, what if Florin leaves? What happens? So we had, 3 case scenarios, that if Florin leaves, what do we do? So we kind of play with these scenarios. What if they leave? But we don't spend a lot of time into looking at, why should they stay?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah.
Do you get the difference? So when
Yeah.
you think
Yeah.
about retention, we're looking at, okay, what if they leave, and what will be some of the reasons why they will leave? But we don't spend a lot of time looking at what are some reasons why they should stay, right? So that's kind of the mindset shift that we want to make. So even if you are afraid or maybe worried that people might leave, well, if we spend more time into thinking about that, think about what we're going to do. We're going to try to do things just to have them stay. So sometimes we're going to maybe, offer them opportunities for growth, just so they don't leave, or maybe we will increase their salaries just so they don't leave, rather than looking at, oh, but what if we help them see value in being part of the team? What if we help them see what I love about work? Does it make sense?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes sense, and it's just a matter of, if you remember, and I would like to share with people, think about what is causing somebody to survive rather than to live. So if you want to survive, you just try to keep everything, your efforts to the minimum. You want to make sure that you actually keep yourself alive. But when you are thinking about, okay, I want to live, I want to follow my dreams, I want to go further, I want to be included, I want to have a contribution. So it's like a matter for everybody to think about. When we think about the difference between retention and inclusion, just think about this one. How can you make your employee one of your best employees to be included in the team, and maybe to be part of the team and to be part of the bigger goal or part of the bigger vision, because not all employees will see or will understand the bigger picture that the leader is seeing. So I'm looking forward for you to give us some tips and tricks.
Yeah,
What
absolutely.
is
So
how to include people and not
yeah,
to
absolutely.
focus on the retention.
Sure. So one resource that I found really, really valuable, and this is actually a book that I can definitely recommend, is by Marcus Buckingham. Now, Marcus Buckingham is a very well-known consultant in the area of teamwork, and he works for the Gallup organization. He was actually a guest speaker of what one of our events. So he shared that uh, his latest book is called Love and Work, and it's kind of challenging. Why should you put the two together? Like when you think about love, you maybe think about your kind of personal relationships, not about work. But
Yeah,
he's talking about, if at the end of the day we find love in what we do, that will keep us filled, right? And when we
yeah,
look at creating that kind of environment where people feel included, we're looking at giving them the feeling that um, we value them and helping them see value and see love in what they do. So we have put in the guide 4 questions that you should ask your team, and you could ask your team in order for you to kind of figure out where they're at and help them. So he shares something like that. He says, talk with your people about what did you love about last week.
mm-hmm,
Think about
mm-hmm.
that. Like, how many leaders ask their employees, what did you love about last week?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that question is not that often said. Maybe
No.
not at all.
Yeah. Why? Because we don't think about that. But if we don't help our people to find love in what they do and let them tell us, it's almost like, here is the shift. Instead of us trying to convince them to stay, help them convince you to keep them. Almost like they have to sell you into the fact that they love this work, rather than you
Mm-hmm.
selling them into the fact that they should keep this job or stay with you. That makes sense?
Mm-hmm. It's a different perspective. It's another switch in the perspective. Yeah.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Because if you think about that, asking people what do they love about last week, it will help them. They will have to come up with something. They maybe they don't come up with something at the first time you ask them, but if you ask them next time, they maybe come up with something, which means that you
Yeah.
help them find love in what they do, right? And then ask them, what did you learn last week? Because the first question helps them to find, interesting things and something they love, and find interest in their work, and you kind of shift the conversation between them complaining about 1 or 2 things that do not work into them kind of telling about the fun part of their work, right? And the second one
Yeah.
is, ask them, what did you learn last week?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And that
mm-hmm.
also keeps them and their mind into, oh, okay, so if I know that when I meet Florin he's going to ask me these questions, it's better for me to kind of find out something that I learned last week. And if not, then
Be
maybe
prepared.
I'm going to exactly, I'm going to add something that I should learn maybe during next week. So that way, it keeps them, it keeps their mind on, okay, this is a developing place, this is a place where I can develop, where I learn new things, right? Like if you
Yeah.
ask someone, what did you learn in your work, last month, some people will have really hard time to answer that.
Yeah. Because they're doing like a routine job and they don't have anything new to learn or do. So
Or
it's,
maybe they have, but they don't think about it that way. And if no one asks
yeah,
us, like, think about that. Think about what you do, or not what you do, but what we do, like humans, with our children when they come back from the school. They ask you, what did you learn today,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And then we want them to be excited about the things that they learn, and kind of, so they sell us on the fact that they actually learn something at school, and they like going to school, rather than us convincing them to go to school.
Is
Same.
when you find a passion for something that you're doing, you are more eager to come back next day and start over again or do the same thing. Yeah, it's a very different perspective that you're saying and you're stating, Florin, because not not many employees and not many leaders understand this, because they are not, let's say, they are not used to that. And when you ask me what was, when you ask the question, what was good about last week, it was the vacation. So when you have a holiday or a vacation,
Yeah,
so when you had, when you have this as something that you love about your work, that's a problem. Yes,
yeah,
because
that's
many people would say, yeah, I had a weekend, or yes, it was nice, and I had 1 day off or 2 days off. But so that's one reason to pay attention to people. If they want, if they say that they love that, that means that maybe they don't find something good or something valuable or something that they love in their work. So what else can you say, as tips and tricks for leaders to include people rather than
yes.
retain?
Sure, and then I think there are a couple of more questions. So, for example, then you want to ask them what would they be working on next week. So let's say these are questions that we should ask our
Mhm.
people on a regular basis, right? One of the next topics for the next episode will be to talk to our people often about the things that they are important to them, right? So this is just kind of a precursor of what we're going to do next week, but we're looking at what are you going to work on next week. In other words, we have them think about what they want to do and what we have them to do next week, so we can on one side see if they're working on the on the priorities that we want them to work. Like when you sit with your team, ask them, what did you love about last week work, and what did you learn last week, what are you going to be working on next week, and then how can I help you, right? So if you ask them these four questions, that will create the basis for them, first of all, to find things that they love and they enjoy about the work, to recognize and reiterate that this is a place where I develop and I learn. If that's the case, if not, then maybe you have to find some things that they want to learn and develop. Then make sure that they are excited about next week as well, that there will be some things that they want to work on, and they're not just kind of cursing and dreading and stuff like that. And make sure that you also are aligned on the priorities, and that the things that they're going to work on is what you want them to work on. And then of course
Mhm.
ask them how can you help them.
Yeah, yeah. I really think that the fourth questions is as important as the other three questions, because then the employee will know that they are not alone in this road, in this journey with the company. So in this situation, of course, we you need to also follow the previous episodes, because we are talking about this one: how can you offer your help to the employee, and how can you gain your trust of the employee in you, so you can actually be there for them and they will ask for your help and things like that. So it's important for people to understand that you are there for them, even though maybe you cannot help them directly with your expertise, but you might know somebody else to help them. But at least they need to know that you are there supporting them whatever they do. And
Exactly.
also you said something, and I would like to share a little bit more about that. You also said about projects, to include them in specific projects, so they have something bigger than the day-to-day job they are involved in. So I think also this is very important in the inclusion part. So what can you tell us more about these projects that we would like to include people?
Absolutely. So I just had a call with one of my clients. So we take them through an assessment. So we have an assessment for communication leadership assessment. So we took everyone through that assessment, and now we have a group report that we share with the leader. So when we look at that group report there, um, they are things that the team could do. So, in other words, it suggests these are some ways that you can improve your team performance. And when I sat with this leader, I said, okay, so if you go with these ideas and you just present these ideas to your team, they're going to probably say, well, this is something that comes from my leader, or is this report? Like, I don't even trust this report. So what I suggest them to do is to have a conversation, say, here is what are some suggestions for us to work on. and then get the ownership of the team. Like, in other words, okay, so this report says that we should create some systems to stay more organized. Do you feel this is something that we should improve upon? And if they say
Mm-hmm.
yes, then you want to include them and say, hey, and what are some systems we can create? So let's brainstorm a little bit. So when you brainstorm with your team, then you can prioritize 2 or 3 things that then the team will work on. So that way you give them some, as you said, some projects to work on that are not their work, but this is for the continuous improvement of the team. But you want the team to be included in that, rather than you coming and say, hey, this is the things that I want us to work on. You have a conversation and say, hey, these are some guidelines. So we've done this assessment just to help us have some objective view on our team composition. And now these are some suggestions. So this report suggests us to do this and that and that. Okay, do you feel this is something we should be doing? This is something that you also see that it will help us improve? Or do you feel that we don't have any problem here? Because that's, you want their buy-in. If they say, well, I don't think we have a problem here, Florin, I say, okay, great, okay, good, okay. I'm not gonna force that on you, because then I try to convince you. But then let's go to something else. So where do you think we should be improving? So that way you include your team in the team development. And when you include them and they come with ideas, then they also take ownership of those ideas, and then they build on those ideas. And that way, in which they have ownership of those ideas, and
Mm-hmm.
that will also fuel them. So that will give them something that they will work on next week, and some things to love about last week, because they get involved into the development of the team. They feel included,
Mm-hmm.
rather than being
Mm-hmm.
top down and just impose on them.
So in this situation, it's very true, as the quote, be irreplaceable in the team. So you as leader should make sure that your top employees are irreplaceable, and they also know that. So you need to include them as much as you can, and they can.
Absolutely.
Good. I think this is it on my list of
Yeah.
questions related to what we had. If there is anything else that you would like to add to this conversation
No,
related
I
to
think that
inclusion.
that's all. I don't think there was much more in the. I mean, on this topic specifically, I think that was what it was. Well, actually, also, for example, one thing that I had here is that when someone leaves, leaves a company or leave our company, sometimes it's very easy for us to focus on trying to convince the person or trying to help the person, change their mind, and then focus too much on them. And so we
Yeah.
don't spend a lot of time on those that stay. So we might focus too much time on people that leave, rather than focusing on those who stay, right? So
Yeah.
if
For
we
yeah,
actually, exactly, so
keeps
this is
the job
again,
running.
it's sending the wrong message. Say, hey, so the only way for me to get a lot of attention from Florin is to threat him that I'm gonna leave, right? Eh,
Yeah. That might be the case for people to see it
yeah.
like that. Yeah.
So
And
again,
I also see it like that around me. Some people did the same thing. They didn't get too much attention before. They were okay. I'm doing my job. Everything is working perfectly. I'm seeing, or I'm meeting with my boss once a month, maybe twice per month, and that's it. But when I said I'm leaving, everybody's alert. My boss is alert. I said, okay, where were
that
you 2 months ago when I needed you? When were you that? So
exactly.
it's a problem, yeah. So I say you're right.
Yeah. So these are things actually that we could do. So again, if you don't want to wait until next episodes and see the all 5 episodes, you can download this guide. There will be a link in the comments. You can download it. And what we're gonna cover, we're expanding much more in the next episode. So I look forward to see you again next week with another topic, or actually with another aspect of retention, when we're gonna look at some of the things that are important to our people and how do we integrate those things into our conversations we have with them, because many times we want to see our team for things that are important to us and the business, and not that often for things that are important to them. So we're going to talk about talking
Mm-hmm.
often about the things that are important to our team, not the things that are important to us.
Yeah. Cannot wait for the next week.
Absolutely. I look forward to see you again next week. All right, take care. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye, everybody.